10 LGBTQ stars who hid their identity during classic Hollywood cinema. Hollywood's golden age was built on illusions, perfect smiles, flawless romance, and stars who seemed larger than life. But behind the studio gates, another story was playing out, hidden from the flashbulbs and fan magazines. A story of actors and actresses forced to mask who they truly were because the price of honesty was career ruin. What if I told you the biggest stars of the silver screen were carrying secrets that could have shattered their image? Let's pull back the curtain. Rock Hudson. He was the very definition of Hollywood masculinity. Broad-shouldered, smooth-voiced, the man every woman supposedly dreamed of. Rock Hudson was Universal Studios' crown jewel in the 1950s, a leading man who lit up the screen in romantic classics like Pillow Talk and Magnificent Obsession. But here's the twist. While the world saw a ladies' man, Hudson's real life was carefully hidden behind studio walls. Did you know that when a scandal sheet threatened to expose Hudson, his handlers scrambled to protect him, even arranging a marriage of convenience? To the public, it looked like a fairy tale. To Hudson, it was survival in an industry that punished difference. Imagine the pressure, having to play a role not just on screen, but in every waking moment of your life. Hudson carried that weight for decades, his secret known to insiders, but whispered only in shadows. His story wasn't just about stardom. It was about the cost of keeping Hollywood's illusion alive. Cary Grant. Cary Grant. The name alone sounds like charm, doesn't it? Smooth, witty, effortlessly stylish. The man who turned sophistication into box office gold in films like North by Northwest and An Affair to Remember. But Hollywood's most eligible bachelor had a private life that fans never got to see. Grant shared an unusually close bond with fellow actor Randolph Scott. Not a fling, not a passing friendship. They lived together in what the press cheekily called a bachelor house in Santa Monica. Studio heads hated it. They feared whispers, so they staged photo shoots of Grant with beautiful starlets, all to sell the image of a straight-arrow leading man. But behind the velvet curtains, Grant and Scott built a home filled with laughter, quiet mornings, and a bond that outlasted Hollywood's gossip cycle. Did you ever wonder why Grant's love life seemed like a carousel of quick marriages and sudden endings? Some insiders believed it was part of the smokescreen, each wedding and divorce another way to bury suspicions. Here's the irony. Cary Grant, the man who made romance look effortless on screen, was never allowed to show his truest one in public. In the world of classic Hollywood, image was currency, and Grant's secret companionship was the most carefully guarded treasure of all. Randolph Scott. If Cary Grant was the polished diamond, Randolph Scott was the steel, rugged, tall, the kind of man who looked like he could rope a steer with one hand and sip bourbon with the other. Hollywood sold him as the quintessential cowboy hero, riding across the big screen in classics like Ride the High Country. But away from the saddle, Scott's most defining role was one you never saw advertised: partner, confidant, and quiet constant in Cary Grant's life. For years, the two actors lived together in their seaside home, a mansion the press dubbed Bachelor Hall. Fan magazines sometimes ran playful spreads of the pair lounging by the pool, wearing matching trousers, cooking breakfast like domestic roommates. It all seemed innocent, but the whispers never stopped. Executives panicked, worried the public might see more than just friendship. Did you know that even decades later, when Grant had become an icon and Scott had retired into wealth and respectability, their bond still raised eyebrows? They never confirmed anything, never gave the press satisfaction. But insiders in Hollywood knew these men were more than neighbors. Randolph Scott never chased the spotlight the way others did. He let the studios paint him as the rugged loner. Yet beneath the cowboy hat was a man who chose companionship over public approval. If Grant played the leading man, Scott played the anchor, the one who held the secret steady while the rest of Hollywood spun its illusions. Tab Hunter. Tab Hunter looked like he was sculpted from California sunshine. Blonde hair, boyish smile, and a screen presence so fresh it made audiences swoon. Warner Brothers had big plans for him in the 1950s. The perfect teen idol, the kind of star who could charm parents and send teenagers racing to the box office. But the carefully polished image came with one rule: never, ever let the public know who Tab really was. The studio orchestrated dates with leading ladies, snapping photographs of Hunter on red carpets with glamorous starlets clinging to his arm. Behind closed doors, though, He pursued his own relationships, sometimes with fellow actors who knew the same suffocating drill. Here's a little-known story. At the peak of his fame, a scandal magazine tried to out him, threatening to destroy the clean-cut image Warner Brothers had invested in. The studio moved fast, squashing stories, planting decoys, even feeding reporters gossip about other stars to protect Hunter. And here's the kicker. While Hollywood wanted him to be the poster boy for innocence, Tab Hunter carried the burden of secrecy heavier than most. The very thing that made him magnetic, his sincerity, his warmth, was also what he couldn't fully share with the world. Decades later, when Hunter finally told his own story, audiences learned what insiders had always suspected. He wasn't just a pretty face of the 1950s. He was proof that beneath the glossy Hollywood machine, real people were struggling to live authentic lives in a town that demanded masks. Anthony Perkins. The name Anthony Perkins will forever be tied to one character, Norman Bates. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho turned him into a household name, his face etched into film history as the boy next door who hid a chilling darkness. But what the world didn't know was that Perkins himself was also living a double life, one shaped not by horror scripts, but by Hollywood's ironclad rules of image. Perkins came up in the 1950s, an era when studios carefully built personas brick by brick. His was the sensitive, shy young man, a heartthrob for women who loved a brooding dreamer. But away from the camera, Perkins sought comfort and companionship with men, fellow actors like Tab Hunter, who understood the coded signals and the necessity of secrecy. Did you know Perkins was once warned by studio advisors to avoid being seen at certain restaurants in Los Angeles because they were rumored to be too dangerous for his reputation? The irony was rich. Here was a man praised for his vulnerability on screen, yet forbidden from living his truth in daylight. Later in life, Perkins did marry and have children, but insiders whispered it was less about reinvention and more about survival in a business where rumors could end a career overnight. His legacy as Norman Bates still looms large, but behind the curtain was a story of a man caught between talent, fear, and a town that demanded silence. Anthony Perkins wasn't just acting on screen. He was acting in life, too. George Nader. George Nader never reached the stardom of Rock Hudson or Cary Grant, but his story is one of loyalty and sacrifice, one of Hollywood's cruelest cautionary tales. With rugged good looks and solid performances in films like Robot Monster and The Unguarded Moment, he seemed poised to rise. But in the mid-1950s, fate and scandal rewrote his script. When Confidential magazine threatened to expose Rock Hudson's private life, Universal needed a shield. That shield was George Nader. Insiders believe he took the fall to protect Hudson, stepping into the line of fire so that his friend, one of the studio's most valuable stars, could remain untouchable. The cost was staggering. Roles dried up. Producers quietly pulled his name from projects. Hollywood, that glittering dream factory, slammed its gates shut. But Nader never broke. He reinvented himself overseas, found modest success in European cinema, and, most importantly, lived quietly and openly with his partner, Mark Miller, away from the unforgiving glare of the American press. Here's the part that hits hardest. When Rock Hudson later wrote his will, he left George Nader a substantial inheritance. It was his way of saying thank you, a silent acknowledgement of the sacrifice that had helped preserve his empire. George Nader may not have headlined dozens of classics, but his story echoes through Hollywood history. It's about friendship, resilience, and the brutal reality that sometimes survival in Hollywood meant one man stepping into the shadows so another could keep shining. Barbara Stanwyck. Barbara Stanwyck was Hollywood steel wrapped in satin. She could play anything: femme fatale in Double Indemnity, struggling mother in Stella Dallas, or hardened rancher in The Big Valley. Off-screen, though, Stanwyck lived by a code of silence. She built one of the most powerful careers of her era, but her private life was an enigma wrapped in whispers. Studio press agents painted her as fiercely independent, a woman too busy conquering Hollywood to settle down. She had marriages, yes, but insiders noted how short they were, how carefully controlled the publicity appeared. Behind the scenes, her closest bonds were often with women, friendships that carried the kind of intensity and longevity that set tongues wagging. Did you know Stanwyck was known for throwing lavish dinner parties, where her guest lists often leaned toward other women navigating the same private labyrinth? Industry gossip ran wild, but nothing ever stuck. Why? Because Stanwick was smart. She mastered the art of control, giving just enough to the public to keep them fascinated, but never enough to reveal her truth. The irony is sharp. Stanwick made a career playing characters who took charge of their destinies, yet she was forced to keep her most authentic self locked away. In the end, Barbara Stanwyck didn't just act in films, she acted through her entire life, performing the role of the untouchable Hollywood queen who lived only for her craft. Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich didn't just walk into Hollywood. She sauntered in, cigarette in hand, eyes half-lidded, and immediately bent the rules to her will. From Morocco to Shanghai Express, she was the embodiment of glamour, danger, and allure. But the most fascinating part of her story wasn't what she revealed on screen. It was what she concealed in public. Dietrich was known in private circles as a woman who lived boldly. She had affairs with men, yes, but also with women. Powerful names, fellow actresses, and socialites who adored her. In Hollywood's glittering nightlife, she pushed boundaries, sometimes arriving at parties in a tuxedo, her arm linked with another woman's. The studios spun it as eccentricity, as European flair, never admitting what it truly was. Defiance. Did you know that during World War II, when she entertained troops on the front lines, soldiers adored her not just for her voice, but for her fearless aura? She gave them the illusion of a perfect Hollywood goddess, even while carrying a secret truth that could have ended her career if it had made the front page. Dietrich once said, "I am at heart a gentleman." That sly remark was more than wit. It was a quiet rebellion, a way of speaking the truth without ever being caught. Marlene Dietrich's life was proof that sometimes the most glamorous illusion of all was freedom disguised as mystery. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead was a storm in pearls and velvet. She had a voice like gravel wrapped in silk and a laugh that could shake a room. On screen, she was magnetic in films like Lifeboat, but off-screen, she was even more unforgettable. Bankhead lived life loud, daring, and deliciously reckless. Yet even her boldness had to be cloaked in a haze of ambiguity. She never hid her appetite for adventure, for company, for living without restraint. But in Hollywood's press machine, her intimacy with women was brushed aside as eccentricity, as if it were just another quirk of the larger-than-life Tallulah. The truth was far more complicated. Bankhead was fearless in private circles, often joking about her romances with both men and women, but the industry never allowed the public to hear the punchline. Did you know Bankhead once quipped that she had slept with hundreds of women and men, only to have reporters file it away as a scandalous joke? That was her power. She blurred the line between confession and performance so thoroughly that no one could tell where Tallulah ended and the mask began. Tallulah Bankhead wasn't just a star. She was a warning shot across the bow of polite society. She tested the boundaries of what Hollywood could tolerate, and though the world never saw the full truth, the legend she left behind glows with the heat of secrets half-spoken. William Haynes. Before sound revolutionized Hollywood, William Haynes was one of MGM's brightest stars. Handsome, witty, and charming, he was the perfect leading man of the silent era. But unlike others on this list, Haynes didn't just hide. He made a choice. Haynes lived openly with his partner, Jimmy Shields, in a time when such honesty was unthinkable. MGM adored his talent, but the studio's patience ran out when scandals brewed. Executives gave him an ultimatum: marry a woman to save his career or walk away from stardom. Haynes didn't flinch. He chose love. He chose Shields. And in doing so, he chose exile from the Hollywood dream factory. Did you know that while his film career ended, Haynes reinvented himself as one of the most successful interior designers of his generation? His clients included some of the same stars who once shared the screen with him, proving that talent and resilience could outshine rejection. William Haynes' story isn't one of loss, it's one of triumph. He lived the life he wanted, hand in hand with the man he loved, for nearly 50 years. Hollywood took away his spotlight, but it couldn't take away his truth. In the end, he may have been the bravest star of them all. So, there you have it. 10 stars who defined an era with their brilliance while hiding truths that could have destroyed them. In Hollywood's golden age, the biggest performances weren't always on screen. They were in the carefully staged smiles, the studio-arranged romances. The lives lived in shadows so the dream factory could keep glowing. But here's the question. How many more stories like these still lie buried under the glamour? How many secrets still haunt the celluloid? If you want more hidden Hollywood mysteries, hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for the next reel of revelations. Until then, remember, in this town, the spotlight shows you everything and nothing at all.